Broadcasting from the Cass Corridor in Detroit, this is The Metro, a slice of news, culture, and conversation. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. Today on the program, the next mayor of Detroit has a big job to do.
That's because the next mayor could build on Detroit's growing momentum, or they could stifle it.
We'll untangle the roots of mayoral history in Detroit and what the crowded field of candidates looks like today.
Plus, Michigan Democrats are trying to put back together the pieces after losing a majority in the state house and losing Michigan to Trump.
We'll hear from the new chair of the Michigan Democratic Party about a potential path forward. But first, so far, Donald Trump's presidency has been marked by confusion and chaos, especially for many federal workers. Federal departments are under scrutiny by Trump and Elon Musk under the guise of making the government more efficient. Although Musk wasn't elected by anyone, he's been making sweeping changes and massive cuts to federal agencies, many of which regulate his companies. His Department of Government Efficiency, created by executive order by Trump, has also fired 1,000 National Park Service employees, 3,400 U.S. Forest Service workers, and 2,400 people at the Veterans Affairs Department.
And Robin, these moves have frustrated many people and sparked some heated moments across the country. In town halls held this past weekend, Republican lawmakers were confronted by angry voters demanding answers. Doug Collins, the Trump-appointed Veterans Affairs Secretary, has said that the department isn't cutting critical health care or benefits. So what is happening with Veteran Affairs, its services, and its employees? What kinds of effects will this have here in Michigan? Joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. She represents Michigan's 6th congressional district, and she's been sounding the alarm about cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Congresswoman Dingell, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro.
It's good to be with both of you this morning at the Metro.
Yes. So first things first, give us a little background, key functions of the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs.
Well, let me say what the people that were cut were people that were at I've got 2 VA hospitals that I care about deeply. One is the Detroit VA Hospital, which happens to have the name of my husband on the side of it. And I feel I have a very serious responsibility to the patients that are there. But so does this country, to the men and women who fought for us. And the Ann Arbor VA. The 1,000 cuts that happened at the VA were across the country at VA hospitals. So I am a regular visitor to both hospitals. I care very deeply about a variety of issues, and there have been issues. There were some very serious ones at both hospitals, but at the John Dingell most recently. And I have for decades before I ever went into Congress, have always gone to both hospitals on Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. When I was there it's been 2 Fridays. It's hard to keep track. It's maybe been 12 days since I was there. It was the day after people had been fired at both hospitals. Researcher had been fired doing some very important work at the Ann Arbor, as well as a number of other employees, some of them in managers' positions. And people have been let go at the Detroit VA as well. And remember, this is on top of people being offered a buyout and being encouraged to take it. What I saw that day, what people told me, and they do talk to me, was low morale, not knowing what was coming, a lot of confusion. But more than anything, from all of the employees there, concern for patient care, for patient safety. What was it going to do to patient care? So I asked questions, and I haven't gotten a lot of answers, but I think we have a moral obligation to ensure that our veterans are taken care of. They get the health care they need. It has taken us decades to do some of the things we needed to do. The PACT Act 2 years ago finally took care of Vietnam veterans, people that had served in Iraq and Afghanistan that exposed to Agent Orange to burn pits. Important research is being done at the Ann Arbor VA on that We cannot go back on that. We cannot go backwards.
Congresswoman, so what role do these hospitals play in the lives of veterans, specifically here in Michigan? You just talked about that a researcher that lost a job there. Can we just talk a little bit about the importance and the key roles here of the people who work in these hospitals and how much it means to our veterans?
There are nurses. There are doctors. They are the managers. They're people, by the way, that make sure that the building is heated and warm when it's 0 degrees out. They're the people that fix the food. They're the people that clean the rooms. All of that is the team that takes care of the veterans. And these hospitals are where our veterans get the health care they need, earned, and deserved. And many of them have health conditions from the service that they did.
And Congresswoman, how would you characterize the health of the department's workforce prior to these cuts and prior to the panic that we're seeing right now? Were the VA hospitals staffed well beforehand?
It's taken a while to get them there, quite frankly. We've worked very hard to address problems. They weren't staffed as well as they did. There were long lines to get appointments. Those problems had been addressed in the last couple of years, as well as getting veterans treatment for having Agent Orange or been near a burn pit. Quite frankly, I'll be very blunt. This wasn't a Republican administration. I went to a Democratic administration at the Detroit VA. You've seen stories on this. There were real performance issues there. I went to the Secretary of the VA and said things are wrong there. The Inspector General did a study, but did an investigation, discovered yes, there were. And as a result, to be perfectly frank, the VA, the director of the Detroit VA hospital was fired, which doesn't happen very often. You got to pay attention. These veterans deserve to be taken care of.
And Congresswoman Dingell, what will this actually mean in the long run? I hear you talking about it took a while to get the hospital staff to the level that they are now. It took a while to get to a place where it is actually helping folks who really need the help. What does this mean in the long run? Are there talks of technology replacing these positions? What are we thinking?
Well, technology cannot replace a nurse or a doctor taking care of some people. But one of the issues that I'm worried about is that there's a new electronic record system going in, Oracle, and that has actually been causing patient care issues, and that there may not be enough personnel to carry it out. So that's another question I ask. So we got to make sure that we've got the people there. People that were fired were in management positions. You can't eliminate those management positions. How are they backfilling them? And what we really don't know is how many people have taken the buyout. What is the real number of how many employees are going to be gone from both hospitals? What was the work they're doing, and how is that work going to continue to be done?
You're listening to The Metro on WDET. I'm Tia Graham.
And I'm Robin Vincent. We're speaking with U.S. Representative Debbie Dingell about cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs and how they stand to affect people in Michigan. Congresswoman, the changes happening at the federal level a la Trump and Musk have been dizzying. We know you're concerned about cuts to the Department of Veterans Affairs. Are there other changes that have you worried in this moment?
We're living kind of in a chaotic time right now. It is intentional and organized chaos. And what you're seeing with DOGE is just a meat cleaver across the board. Do I think that we can reduce expenditures? Yes. And I'm sure the Defense Department's a place that we could start. But this meat cleaver that is being taken, I don't believe that people want to ever see another child poisoned by lead in their water. How are we going to make sure that our kids are going to schools where the air isn't dirty and they're going to have asthma attacks? We're seeing measles outbreaks in Texas. The CDC staff has been cut just when we've got an increase in the bird flu and a new COVID virus discovered in China. I could go department by department. Food banks have had the need for food banks and food has never been greater in our state, and it's going to get worse as prices are not going down for groceries and people are losing their jobs, but they've lost from USDA some food allotment.
Congresswoman I'm sorry, forgive me for jumping in here, but you've listed off quite a few things. I'm wondering if of that list, if there are, let's say, a few things in particular that you feel are most pressing for Michiganders.
Well, the ones I just gave you are very serious, making sure that our food banks have are able to feed where the need is. We could be looking at Medicaid cuts that will deny seniors long-term care, children will be denied health care. We may not have SNAP, which helps keep our kids from being hungry. I'm worried about a lot, not a little, a lot. All these programs impact our communities and our neighbors.
If we could, I want to turn to Doug Collins for a moment. That's the Trump-appointed Veterans Affairs Secretary. He says the department is now more efficient, especially when it comes to posting more benefits in response to claims. How do you respond to that?
I don't know what that means. A lot of veterans have been able to get doctor's appointments. The stories that I could tell you of, someone who had cancer of the mouth and couldn't get appointments. And I had to call an oncologist. So one person's, wanting to say that to you doesn't mean that the veterans in our community are getting the health care that they need in a timely fashion. And that's what I'm going to make sure they are.
What else are you hearing from your constituents in Michigan right now, Congresswoman Dingell?
I'm hearing from everybody on everything. That's why we call it mass chaos or organized chaos. People are, they're worried. The researchers at many of the research institutions in Michigan have had studies just cut or put on hold, or meetings that were going to occur, on cancer drugs, cardiac, high blood pressure. I know I'm giving you a lot of examples, but that's the meat cleaver. That's what's happening across the board. We had a day that Meals on Wheels were told they were being put on hold. You had Head Start programs that weren't happening. We need clarification. We need to really know what is going to happen, what is going to continue. And some of these programs are really, really critical to the health of our communities.
Congresswoman Dingell, there is a lot of talk right now, though, about congressional Democrats needing to come together, that right now they need to be coming out in full force and uniting against Trump. It has me wondering, what are congressional Democrats doing to oppose this so-called meat cleaver that you're talking about?
Well, we're doing things like what I just showed you on raising the awareness on the veterans and a lot of other issues. By the way, I want to say this to Democrats listening to the show. Republicans love it when we have a circular firing squad, and we're very good at taking shots at each other. We are trying to be organized, effective. We have a 5-pronged approach. We have to litigate, legislate, educate, advocate, and communicate. And that's what we're working on, and you're not going to be effective if you go after everything. You have to pick the big issues that impact people the most and raise up the human faces that are being hurt and impacted by them.
Congresswoman Debbie Dingell represents Michigan's 6th Congressional District. Representative Dingell, thank you so much for joining us on the Metro today.
Thank you for having me.
Tomorrow, we'll hear from a Marine veteran who lost his job at the Veterans Affairs Medical Center in Ann Arbor as parts of the cuts that we were discussing with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell. Later in the show, we'll speak with a former associate director of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau about what cuts at that watchdog agency will mean for Americans and Michiganders.
WDET Newsroom, former Michigan House Speaker Joe Tate is not running for mayor of Detroit. Tate filed an exploratory committee in November and had scheduled a campaign announcement for Monday, February 25th. Tate told Crain's Detroit he was going to announce, but has decided to end the campaign. As well, Detroit city workers are helping people clean and sanitize basements that were flooded by a broken water main last week. Inspectors are also checking foundations for flood-related damage.
Coming up at 11, we're talking about the history of Black leadership in Detroit, and we're asking whether the next mayor should be Black. We want to hear what you think. How vital is the race for Detroit's next mayor? Call 313-577-1019. Up next, the Democrats had significant losses at the national level in November, and many believe state Democrats had a poor lame duck session. We'll hear from the new Michigan Democratic chair about what direction he thinks the party should go. We'll be right back on the Metro. Stay with us.